Okay, let's continue to build our example dealing with file input and output. So in the previous example, I showed you this file, which is very simple and not 100% correct, but let's go through that so we can make sure that we understand what the different pieces are. So first of all, to start off with, we know that we opened this file, example.txt file, we read from it, and we printed the content on the console. Now, there's one thing that I did not cover in the previous video, and that is that we want to always close all of our resources. So when we have this file opened, we want to, at the end, we want to close it. We'll always want to close it. And if we run this, we're not going to see anything different, but at least we know that this is the correct rule of thumb to follow, which we opened something, well, we should always close it. This leads me to this next idea, which is we always should use a context manager. I say that because that's what I prefer. So you could do either or. You could use this manual way of opening and closing the file, or you could use a context manager. Well, what's a context manager? We're going to get into that. But before I do, there's one more thing I didn't cover just for simplicity purposes and to keep the video short in the previous video. But here we're going to talk about some default parameters here, which is read. You could write, you could have binary mode, right? You could have text mode. Here what we have is RT for read and text. So what does that mean? That means that RT is the default. If we ran this, we got this working perfectly. And if we ran this with RT, we would see that there's no different output. Why? Because that is the default. Right, read and text is the default. These are the modes, by the way. So this is the file that we're going to open or deal with, interact with. The second parameter is going to be the modes. And the mode in this case is going to be read and text. So again, this is the default. You don't have to do that, but a good practice is to always be explicit in programming, and it's very obvious as to what it is that we're doing for readability and maintainability purposes. So that's that. And the next thing I wanted to talk about was, okay, the context managers. Let's talk about that. So with context managers, we can say with open, this is the file, this is the mode, and you're going to say as my content, or my file rather, my file, and we're going to put that into a block. And so this, the with keyword with open, this basically defines the fact that you're using a context manager, and my file is going to be the variable or the handle that we're going to use to deal with my file. Now we don't need this anymore. Why? Because the context manager is going to be closing our file automatically for us, right? So what can we do? Well, we can save it and run it, see what happens. And we can see we get exactly the same thing. But notice that this is a preferred method because we don't have to worry about closing the resource. And you know, one of the things I always say throughout all my videos and my courses is that the more you have to manage, the worse off you'll be. In other words, the less things you have to manage in software, the better off you'll be, because you won't forget to do a specific thing. In this case, closing the file. So in this case, of course, we could do that, and that works. What else can we do? Well, the other thing to do is that we always want to be careful about raising errors, like things that could go wrong. So, for example, if we had something here like 12 or something, we know that file doesn't exist. If I run it, save it and run it, we know that we get this. So that's the next thing that we'll talk about in the next video. How do we get rid of this error? Because we know that doesn't exist, so maybe we should be checking first and then do something, right? But if it doesn't exist, maybe we shouldn't do something because it'll have this error. We'll talk about that next.